All right, fantastic. Well, let's get started then. So I'm going to try to do my best to keep this as organized fashion, but I also want us to have a little bit of fun while we do this too. But I know this is a public meeting and very formal. So the city clerk shared kind of a script that I'm going to go through that we're going to have to go through each time. And I'm going to do my best to stick to that. I really appreciate it because I've been kind of struggling with the order of operations, even though I've been doing this for a while and it's really tough for me over Zoom. So, well, anyway, with that said, I still want us all to kind of have fun and be free with these meetings because I really enjoy them. So having said that, I'll call to order the December 7th, 2001 meeting of the Parks, Recreation, and Intergenerational Services Commission meeting at 6:03 p.m. Just as an announcement, pursuant to the governor's executive order N-29-20, members of the West Sacramento Parks, Recreation, and Intergenerational Services Commission and staff will participate in this meeting via a teleconference. To reduce the spread of COVID-19, members of the public are asked to watch the meeting telecast on Wave Cable Channel 20 and to have submitted comments in writing by 5 p.m. on December 7th, 2021. Clerk, could you please call the attendance for our meeting?
Thank you. Commissioner Ahmad? I think she's here. Move forward. Commissioner Castro? Here. Thank you. Commissioner Horwath?
Here.
Vice Chair Reed?
Here.
Commissioner Shackle?
Here.
Chair Jans?
I'm here.
Thank you. I want to check with Commissioner Ahmad one more time. Get a verbal. We see her.
We can't hear you though.
Yeah. We do have a quorum, so we can go ahead and go forward.
Okay, let us know, Commissioner Ahmad, when your audio is up, if you don't mind. I want to be able to hear from you if you have some communications. I wanted to take a moment to welcome our newest commissioner. As you can see, Commissioner Horwitz joined to fill the vacancy that we had with the departure of one of our commissioners. So before we could jump into item 1A, or I guess, you know what we'll do is we'll jump into that real quick. And then when we go to the commissioner communications, if you wouldn't mind, you can introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, if that's cool. Does that work?
Works for me.
All right, great. Then let's do that. Let's do it that way. So we'll jump into item 1A. Let me bring up this. Item 1A, which is presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of the council. Just as a reminder, the commission is not allowed by law to make any comments on items that are not on the agenda. Do we have any communications that were submitted?
I have not received any written communication.
Okay. So then moving on to item 1B, which is commissioner communications. I would like to start with our new commissioner. And then if anyone else has any commission reports that they'd like to provide, raise your hand or let me know. You have the floor, Mr. Horwitz.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I'm Sasha Horwitz. I've lived in West Sacramento since 2015. And this is actually a reappointment for me to the commission. I was the alternate member from 2018 through February of earlier this year. So a little bit about me and my background. I'm an education policy analyst, and I like to describe myself as a science evangelist. I personally always expected to be a biologist, and somehow I found myself working on public policies issues instead of being in the lab or out in the field. So my wife and I have a 5-year-old son. We'll be starting kindergarten here next year. He's an enthusiastic user of the city's parks and rec services. This year, he was able to play on a t-ball team in West Sac Little League, Go Angels. And he also played soccer for the West Sac Soccer Club, Go Avengers. And he also took so much advantage this summer of swimming at the rec center, and he had a great time as long as he was allowed to take off his floaties. So I'm honored to be given the opportunity to serve on the commission once again, and I hope to bring a perspective as a father with young children, but also somebody who is interested in ways to integrate nature into our community, as well as environmental sustainability, anything we can do to promote biodiversity, preserving natural habitat, slow growth. There's a few issues that I think I can hopefully add my voice to. Thank you very much. Commissioner, I believe you're muted.
My apologies. I was just saying, I remember we met a while back pre-COVID, and when we were meeting at the council chambers. So I'm happy to welcome you to the commission formally, and I think we're going to be excited to have you. So thanks so much. Do you have any commissioner communications other than the introduction that you'd like to share?
I have a small communication. My son has been begging me all week to go back to the new miniature ropes course at the new park outside of the rope climbing area, and we'll get around to it once the weather clears up. But other than that, I don't have anything else to report.
Any communications from other commissioners? I know we have a big meeting, but I'll just jump in real quick. I did have an event over at the ropes course for my son's birthday. It was our first attendance there, but we had a blast. And while I was there, I was kind of in the background, low key, kind of scanning the new Heritage Oaks Park ideas that we've been seeing. So I'm really excited about that. But they did a really wonderful job, and we did it at night, which was fun. They kind of give you a little bit of a learning lesson on how to use the equipment, and then you kind of slide your equipment through, and you kind of slowly graduate higher and higher, and more risky things. So it was a lot of fun, and I'm excited to go back. We had a blast, and I'm really excited about the agenda coming up about the Heritage Oaks thing, because I can see the potential for it when I was there, even at night. So. And then secondly, I attended the Christmas tree lighting with, I saw Commissioner Schatzel there as well. That was a really great event. Thank you for the effort that everybody put in. I know the Parks Department was a big part of that. The Chamber of Commerce was a big part of that. Our mayor was there, council members were there. It was just great to not only be there for the event, which included performances from our high school music groups. There was a jazz band there. There was the regiment there. We even had some singing from some youngsters at charter school. And then the fire department and police department were present. So that was really great. They brought Santa in on truck 45. So that was really, really great. And I know that they will be going through the neighborhood. So if you check, I don't know if it's on the city website, but I know it's through their fire department and through their social media. They have a schedule of when they'll be bringing Santa around different areas of West Sacramento as part of their annual Santa event. So check that out. That's a lot of fun. Yeah, it was a great event, and it was really great to see everybody kind of together again. Everyone was being safe, but they had vendors out, and we were all kind of there. And I heard a lot of people commenting on how great it was to just kind of have people out and together again. So thank you to city staff and everybody here at this meeting that was participating in that, because it was a really fun event.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
I want to second everything you just said. I had a great time at the tree lighting as well. I did call Denise Stomke from the chamber. I thought she did a terrific job as an MC. 2 stages. I mean, Santa. And there's so much going on. I thought she did just a great job. And it was truly a fun event. And I'm losing track of time a little bit. Wasn't the Triboli opening between the last meeting and this meeting?
I'm with you. I was trying to think of the same thing. I thought it was before our last meeting, but go ahead, Tracy.
Let me check my calendar.
Because I was going to mention
sure.
that. I was going to mention that, but I'm with Commissioner Schatzel. I couldn't remember if I had mentioned it in the last meeting or not.
Yeah, whenever it was really cool. They were nice people. It was, I met people there that, strangely enough, I play softball against in Sacramento. I didn't even know they lived a block away from the park. So it was just a nice neighborhood, and it's a terrific park. I'm glad the city will take care of it now. It was just really cool. And one final thing, Tracy, a friend of mine gave me an article from the News Ledger written in 1989, where and so I'll get you a copy of this. Is in June, where'd it go? June 28th, 1989. So I'll get that over to you.
Thank you. And we did have the event right after the last commission meeting on Friday, October 15th.
All right. So my brain is not going the same way my driving goes. Okay.
You're not alone. I couldn't think of it myself. But yeah, it was a wonderful event, and the family even invited us into their home afterward for some kind of like a meet and greet. And that was, it was fantastic. All right, I switched over, but I don't remember seeing anybody else that wanted to have any communications. No. All right. Well, then we will keep going into our regular agenda, which is item number 3. I'm sorry, we're going to do the consideration of the and approval of the minutes from the last meeting. If we could call roll for approval, or have a motion to accept the minutes, a second, and then call roll. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes from our last meeting?
So moved.
Second.
So motion to accept by Commissioner Schatzel and second by Vice Chair Reed. Ms. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Thank you. Commissioner Ahmad? Nothing?
Here's your thumb up.
Okay. Commissioner Castro?
Here.
Commissioner Horwitz?
Here.
Vice Chair Reed?
Here. Aye.
There we go.
Thank you. Commissioner Schatzel?
Aye.
And Chair Jans?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so having the approval of minutes approved and moved, now we will move on to the regular agenda. Over here. And this is what I'm excited about. I'm going to scroll down, but this is the Heritage Oaks Master Plan Updated Final Draft Concept by Ms. Michael, our director.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Jans and members of the commission. I am pleased to be joined this evening by Greg Hauser with the HLE Group to share with you an updated version of the Heritage Oaks Park Master Plan based on feedback we received from the commission at the last meeting. We were able to make some refinements based on the feedback received and provide you with a copy of the updated version in your agenda packet. So hopefully you've had some time to look it over. But generally, and I'll share my screen so that I can guide you through the refinements. Can everybody see the site plan?
Yep.
Okay. Generally speaking, it's very similar to the last version with just a few modifications. The first, based on feedback received, is you'll see that the outdoor amphitheater that was proposed to be eliminated from the programming based on feedback is now back in the site plan that can accommodate smaller performances geared more towards acoustic types of performances, but with a special event permit, you could have some amplified sound or perhaps some larger programming take place. It's got a very nice overflow lawn area. It's located in the hub. So it has support services, additional seating, opportunities for play and restrooms. But it is also positioned for the sound to project towards the street and not towards the residents, and is a size that works with the amount of space that we have available for activity and also to support some of the parking. The other feature that is not necessarily, as visible, but is back in is the skate art component in this area. It's we've got, I'll scroll down real quick, just a representative image of unique artwork that can be constructed and designed in a way to use as small skate elements. We have also modified the pathways to just better reflect the current features and offer improved flow through the site. So the previous version has more angular pathways, and this just kind of really widens and expands some of the major pathways, being mindful of the clutter-walled activities and maintenance access and needs to kind of go around the areas where we would have people gathering. And then it also takes into account kind of an updated demonstration garden, passive recreation space on the west side of the property. It reflects a raised boardwalk that transects through the site to provide an ADA accessible pathway through the grove of trees. There's lots of opportunities for educational experiences throughout the park. We also, HLA took a look based on feedback received at the nature play and the water feature to further refine that, even though it's still very much in the design process and there's an opportunity for a lot more input. It is starting to take a little bit more shape and created some more open areas for pedestrian traffic through the site. We were very mindful of clutter-wall business operations and just trying to make sure that we were creating a buffer between their space and other public uses, both from terms of an operational perspective, but also as we move forward with identifying maintenance responsibilities and just general liability. So using the site plan to really help create that definition between the uses, but also having them complement each other. And then as part of this process, HLA also started to develop cost estimates for the park site. We use a general figure of $1 million per acre of park improvements. This is a 9-acre site, but a good portion of the site has the grove of oak trees. And so not all of the site is going to have formal improvements that a more traditional park site would have. So right now we've got a little over between 5 and 6 acres of actual improved space, and the costs have come in right about $5.7 million, not including some of the additional design work needed to get us to construction documents and to bid, but that is in the ballpark of where we thought it would be. And we are in the process of wrapping up our grant application for the Rural Recreation and Tourism Grant Program and asking for $3 million. So more than half of the project costs could be potentially funded with grant funding. I also wanted to share with the commission that this week we reached out to the Yochidehe tribe to invite them to learn about the project site, our master plan process, and also explore opportunities to partner on the site to look at areas where we could include educational experiences, public art, in a partnership, and they were very excited to learn about the site and to potentially work with us on developing some concepts. As some of you may be aware, they have spent a lot of time in this area with recent developments. This is a park site that is very special to them. And as David Tilley, who will be speaking later, could also attest to, there was, and some commissioners who've been involved in this process, there was a lot of effort made to maintain this particular site as a park site. So they were really excited to be able to work with us. So this is the current master plan. I just wanted to share the updates and ask if there's any additional feedback from the commission before we get ready to submit the grant application. That concludes my presentation. Greg Hauser is here to answer any questions that might come up. And please know that this is still very much work in progress. It just lays the foundation that we need to apply for the grant funding and to start getting into much more refined design.
Vice Chair Reed, go ahead.
Oh, what was the fate of the bike park?
Oh, I apologize. Thank you. It's the BMX course is still shown in here. It is a feature that is included for now. I think it's one of those features that, based on the way that the design has been refined, could continue to stay in, or it could. The design also works if that particular feature were omitted from the park. You still have this nice pathway. This could just become, natural space. But we have shown it in right now.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Commissioner Schatzel.
I like it. I just was curious about the maintenance cost. If we have any idea what it might cost, say what is on the plan right now is actually what is built. Do you have any idea what it would cost to maintain it? And then follow up when we eventually get to the city council. I think they would want to know that number as well. It would just be part of a complete staff report to them. So any idea now, or is it just a way premature question to ask?
Well, we're estimating that it would cost anywhere between $70,000 to $100,000 a year to maintain the park site, including utilities. We are currently receiving revenue from the ropes course operation. Clutterwald, as part of our concessionaire agreement, is required to pay an annual amount to the city, a lease of $10,000. And in addition to that, we collect a $2 per person user fee for everybody that uses the ropes course. So any of you have used the ropes course, you've contributed to that $2 per person. We do receive monthly payments from Clutterwald, and one of the provisions of the concessionaire agreement was that we also could receive a percentage of their gross revenues if they achieve certain thresholds. So it's either a minimum annual lease payment or a percentage of their gross revenues. We anticipate that we could recapture a significant amount of the ongoing maintenance costs from these revenues, or choose to use the revenues for something else. Right now, we're just putting them into a fund. So it's not an insignificant amount of money on an annual basis for the maintenance. It depends on a lot of different things. So based on what we have to work from right now, that's a rough estimate of costs.
Yeah, great. I think our park maintenance division is maxed out with the current inventory and the resources they have available. So every time now we add something, and especially something as terrific as this, I think we need an additional appropriation to the budget to maintain it. So I was just trying to get the money from Clutterwald and all that, just a suggestion. But don't tell the city council you're getting that money. Get a general fund appropriation and use the Clutterwald money as, extra, if we could do that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a really important comment. I'm glad that you raised that, Commissioner Schatzel, because one of the things that we've started to do as part of our new budget process at the city is that we have to identify with any new project that we request funding for, what our ongoing O&M costs will be, whether they're one time or ongoing. And that way we can also plan for the ongoing resources needed to support the maintenance of the facility. We didn't always do that with our projects funding requests. Now we're required to do that. So at such time this project is ready to move forward, that will be a requirement. We have to identify the funding, and that's part of the overall budget approval process.
That's terrific. There was a time when we were instructed not to do anything that would require additional general fund money, including apply for grants. If you needed general fund money to support the grant or backfill the grant, don't apply. So I'm glad that, you know, the whole package, the whole formula should include the maintenance costs. I think that's terrific. Thanks.
Commissioner Mott has her hand raised. Were you able to fix your audio?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I had to join the meeting. I wanted to just applaud you all for the really cool master plan that I'm seeing in front of me. And I hope that it continues. As is, one quick question I had about the trees, not the oak trees, but the new trees that will be planted around the field, for instance. Is it going to be all oak? Is it going to be like all native plants? Like what's the decision for trees?
I think at this, you know, at this early stage, I think what our thought is again, keeping up, you know, keeping the natural kind of beauty of the site and the oaks. I think we would definitely want to supplement it with a, you know, a primary palette of more native, you know, flora and fauna. And I think there is some merit to including, you know, a small percentage of more ornamental trees just for, you know, aesthetic purposes and maintainability and whatnot, and just to kind of give it a little bit of, you know, a little bit of variety. But I think we personally see a, you know, a large percentage though being more on that native kind of side of the palette, and I think that speaks to the you know, the beauty of this site in general. And then I think further to emphasize that too is, you know, that's one of the, you know, the ideas with including this demonstration garden and then meditative garden is that, you know, giving the opportunity for the public to you know, be involved in and witness sort of other types of plants that you know, you use you know, you see out there in the environment. I think that's a great opportunity for that particular use to really showcase that.
Absolutely. Being like literally living in the backyard of Heritage Oak, there's so much nature and I don't even know about that. I just don't know enough about the native fauna, birds. About it would be a great opportunity for children about. With the tribe getting involved, I think that's totally, that is so welcome news. I'm always, you know, with this being Heritage Oak, the trees are so old. They've passed like many of our like life, so it's nice to include the first to get their input. I'd love to find out. Again, with they choose to go this route, and you all do as well. Like if there's any language that we can like incorporate, things like what do the native tribes, what do they call these different native, this area, kind of the history would be nice. The demonstration garden, black art. I think that was mentioned before. Overall, kudos to you all. This super fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's a great topic that we could, you know, explore in the interpretive signage program that, you know, we weave into the site. And again, there's just loads of opportunities with all of these things that are kind of being put out there as far as these ideas, and I think that's a great opportunity to really kind of educate the public about the about that the native inhabitants.
One of the things I wanted to share with you, because the question about the BMX course came up here, is that, and I'm jumping ahead, I was hoping to save this for the end of the meeting, but I think it's relevant to share now, just because it might influence some of your feedback. We heard from State Parks today that we were awarded $8.75 million for the renovation and expansion of West Acre Park. And that project is a fabulous project for our community, but it does include a skate park, an expanded and brand new skate park, and a pump track. So it has a very different type of experience there than this site would lend. And it's located, further north in the community, but we are excited to be able to start working on that site and bringing a new bike pump track and skate park to that property.
Forgive me, what's a pump track?
A pump track is well, let me show you. It's, so you can see this little image here, I'll zoom in, is the BMX, kind of a natural constructed bike path with some ramps. A pump track is just more man-made. It is a bike path. It's geared probably for our younger riders, but it's a series of ramps and pathways that you navigate on your bike, or potentially other wheel devices too. And I'll try to pull up an image in a moment. See if I can find a good one. So I'll stop sharing this and see if I can pull one up.
Commissioner Ahmad, did you have further comment?
I just, last time there was discussion about like a mini zip line. That's one.
We have not specifically included that at this point in this early stage. I mean, it's something that I guess could be included if, in the play area, see those kind of more manufactured type of elements that try to give you that same experience. But we've heard that those are somewhat maintenance intensive and subject to breaking a lot. So at this point, it's not a specific element that's been identified in the park, but not to say that it couldn't have, we couldn't explore it further.
This is just a sample image of a pump track. They can be made of different material. And the idea, based on community feedback on the West Acre Park site, was that this might even, be integrated into a skate park in some way. We have to definitely explore it at a more detailed level, but this is a pump track.
Any other comments or questions from the commission? Okay, I'll jump in. I just have a couple of questions and some clarification. So first of all, I think it looks fantastic. I appreciate the effort that went in to include so many things in one park. I know there was discussion on the commission about the ambition of the park. I think kind of we all agreed it was an ambitious plan. However, it also, at least in my mind, invites so many different activities in one area. I have always kind of viewed this plan as being somewhat of an area of discovery, not only of nature and the natural aspects of the park, but also for people to discover that they have a passion for BMX, or maybe they're kind of learn that they are really good at skateboarding, or They want to perform. Maybe they, discover a new sport on the playfield. There's just so many things to do there. Maybe they love to climb. So I really appreciate the ambition behind it. I do concur with Commissioner Schatzel's view on the maintenance aspect. I do think that's an important element to include. So I'm glad that that's being thought of already. I did have a question regarding that. How does $70,000 to $100,000 annually compare to, we don't really have another park like this. But I guess my question is, how does that compare in relation to an average park within the city? Is that more? Is it less? I can speculate that a lot of the elements and features in this are natural and static. So, for example, the water area, I'm sure there has some pump maintenance involved, but the skate park and the BMX thing and the amphitheater, those are all static items. So I imagine it would be some landscaping of the fields and some of the other areas. But I'm just curious, how does a park that's this ambitious, how does that compare in terms of maintenance costs?
Thank you for that question, Chair Jans. It's difficult to compare because this is a different park site. All of our park sites, have unique features that involve different levels of maintenance. What's interesting about this, the short answer is I'm not exactly sure yet. I don't think our park maintenance staff are exactly sure yet. But on this site, with the agreement we have with Clutterwald, they're responsible for the tree care for the oak grove, and that can be a very large expense. And so there are some things like that are helping us save money. But then there are other elements like the water feature that basically needs to be treated like a miniature pool. There's a pump system, filtration system, chemicals that are all required to make sure that it's safe for our users. So there are some elements that are definitely more expensive. We've experienced that at Bridgeway Lakes, although Bridgeway Lakes, the splash pad there, it does not have recirculated water, which is not what we want to keep doing in the future. So the expenses associated with Bridgeway Lake splash pad are different than what they will be on this site. We have less turf on this site. Our irrigation expenses might be lower. We're really focused on native plantings and drought tolerant plantings. So there's just a lot of, different aspects to each park site that have to be considered.
Yeah, that's understandable. And that's what I kind of was getting at, is this is such a unique park that it's, a little bit, I imagine it'd be a little bit difficult to predict, but I feel that cost is relatively low compared to the ambition that, and the amount of features in this park. So that's a good sign. And the shared revenue with Clutterwald is fantastic to hear about that. I imagine that the tier was particularly caught my attention of revenue, because I imagine a park that's bringing this different many people is potentially going to increase the use of their facilities by just acknowledgement alone, saying, oh, this is here, this looks fun, we should try this. So that's great to hear. I was curious about just two other items. Three. Just to clarify, you estimated it was about $1 million per acre, but and this is just clarification, you estimate the cost to be roughly 5.7 million with a $3 million grant. Is that correct? Did I have that correct?
Total cost of 5.7 right now. We're asking for 3 million in grant funding, which would then basically cut the cost to make the improvements to the city in half. Okay,
that's fantastic. The other parts were regarding waste disposal. I imagine, I guess this question is for Greg, but the placement of just, waste, I know it would add a little bit of maintenance to city staff to empty them, but I know in my experience at some other parks, if there's not, waste areas along the trails, throughout the areas, kids, people just kind of, will tend to just throw things on the ground. So hopeful, if there's not one already, to have maybe even small size or something that would be efficiently handled by staff, kind of peppered throughout the park to avoid trash in these beautiful nature landscaped areas. Is there a plan for that, or is that already in the works?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We obviously, yes, we will be including the provisions for trash receptacles, scattered throughout the park. Generally what we do and work with, facility staff during the design process, the future design process moving forward, as far as their path of travel and providing adequate maintenance paths of travel for them to easily access, trash receptacles and whatnot. And so we have allowed in our cost estimate at this early stage the provisions for, trash receptacles and, easy access to that relocated trash dumpster that's on site as well. So yeah, that will be coming in future development of the design.
Fantastic. And then finally, the parking addition. I don't know, based on this map and the idea of bringing buses in, is there consideration for like a one-way in and one-way out? Is that part of the plan? I could see that with the length and then the kind of the turnabout, that it could get, there could be a potential traffic. So I wasn't sure if that was considered. If it's not an issue, I generally had some questions about the flow of traffic moving through that shape of a parking lot.
Yeah, right now, how it's delineated right now is two-way. I think we've accommodated, and just from a overall size of it, we've assumed that it could be two-way migration through there. But to your point, maybe at a certain spot, maybe it becomes only one way or something like that. So that we'll further explore that with I think fire will be involved in that discussion. Your facilities folks will be weighing in on that too for the validity of that. So yeah, that'll be a detail that we'll flesh out. But at this early stage, we've kind of assumed that would be a two-way flow at this point.
Okay, and it seems like that could be something that could easily be changed with marking later if it becomes an issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, fantastic. I'll stop talking. I know we have more to get to, but I think this is fantastic. And these are the kind of things that I'm really happy to be a part of the Parks Commission about. So thank you for your work on this. It looks great. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Let me grab this item again. Back to our.
Yeah, thank you all for all your comments along the way. This has been a great process and developing of the design. And I think what you're seeing here is hopefully it's a nice compromise from all of the great levels of comments that we've had. So we're really pleased from our side of the table and the design side of it, how this is turning out. So thank you all for your comments. They've been very valuable.
So,
Thank you.
Tracy, where does this go now? Does it go back to the Arts Commission? Is that what I read?
We are going to go back to the Arts Commission to provide an update. There's interest in how we're treating the public art for the project, and we wanted to report back on the grant application, which is going to be proposing a really nice public art component. Normally, we're required per our public art strategy to dedicate 1% of the hard construction costs, but just based on the features on this plan, we are currently proposing, I think it's 3%, Greg, because we feel like the features that we're building into the design could either be enhanced with public art, or we would want to have significant standalone features. We've talked about having kinetic art features that children could play on. And so we wanted to make sure we had a robust budget for that. So that's going to be the primary focus of the discussion with the Arts Commission, and also our coordination with Yoshide and how that evolves. There was a comment about language and plantings, and Yoshidehe has a very thorough vetting process that they go through to have all narrative approved by their tribal council. They already have some pre-approved language that we could incorporate as we move forward in the process. And then they also have been involved in projects to help actually select the plantings, based on their historic practices. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and the Arts Commission was interested in learning about that.
So maybe you think maybe this time next year it'll get to the council?
Well, this went to the council already in an earlier draft version with the application for the grant program because a resolution was needed.
Okay.
It will go to the council. My goal is that it'd be nice if we get grant funding and hear about that relatively quickly. But in the interim, it would also be nice to move forward and advance the design. So HLA Group has been contracted to only do the master plan, more conceptual planning. To move into more advanced designs, we would need to amend their contract and provide additional funding.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you everyone for the presentation and the update. This is a really exciting project. We'll move on to item number 4 on our agenda, which is an informational report regarding presentation and discussion of the city's climate action plan update. We reported by David Tilley, the principal planner. Mr. Tilley, you have
Yes, thank you, Chair Jans, and the members of your commission for having us here tonight. We have been slowly starting to roll out where we are going with our climate action planning work, and we have hit almost every commission that there is, and this is the next one on the line. So I'm looking forward to a good discussion tonight. We do have a PowerPoint for you, so I'd like to put that up, please. And I'm going to do some introductory remarks to sort of set the stage, and then Seamus Laffey on my staff is going to give the majority of the presentation tonight about where we're going. So the city's climate action plan work is nothing new. It's something we have been really working on since climate action plans first became a thing in the late aughts. We did our original climate action plan way back in 2009, and we're really learning as we went. Back then, when climate action plans were in their infancy, and in the intervening years, they have evolved probably faster than anything I've seen in my career in their scope and complexity, but also in their critical importance. Climate change is real, it's already happening, and people are already being impacted by it, and also being impacted by it in a disproportionate manner. Next slide, please. So we're going to go over sort of our emissions, where they are, what sectors they come from, and then try to really get into what our goals and actions are. Our work is largely predicated on the work of the Mayor's Commission on Climate Change that wrapped up summer last year, where we were represented on that commission by Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma. And I was the primary staff person associated with that project, as well as a few others. I know Commissioner Reed participated in that effort on the technical advisory committees as well. So that was really meant to form the foundation for where we're going. And so if we can move to the next slide, please. The term bold and aggressive there is in quotes because that was the mantra that was given at the very first meeting of that commission by Mayor Steinberg of Sacramento, and then our previous mayor, Mayor Cabalden. And so that was something that was carried through the whole effort and remained sort of our mantra if we're going to be able to, move the needle on climate change in a way that helps with resiliency and helps us reduce our emissions at the same time. I mentioned the word resiliency because reducing emissions in and of itself is not enough. We will need to work on adaptations to climate change as they go forward. So our work in the Mayor's Commission was fully meant to inform our CAP work, and we have used that as the jumping off point since that effort concluded. That effort was informed by numerous technical advisory committees and different sectors out there, which was represented by a whole wide swath of individuals from all walks of life that helped meant to inform that equity was not something this commission started with, but equity quickly became a theme that emerged out of that work. And it's become very clear you cannot talk about climate change without talking about equity and vice versa. And the Mayor's Commission prepared a final report, which I believe we provided as an attachment to you tonight. That was still kind of at the 30,000 foot level. So our task is really to start to drill that down a little more into the ground and into the real world for us, and how we can do our part to avoid the worst possible effects of climate change. So next slide, please. So this time I'm going to turn it over to Associate Planner and newly minted AICP Planner, Seamus Laffey on my staff, who's going to take you through the rest of the presentation.
Yes, good evening, everyone. So the ultimate goal of the Mayor's Climate Commission and the Climate Action Plan is to get to net zero by 2045. So first step for our work here is identifying the current inventory of greenhouse gas emissions in the city. So as you can see here, 64% come from transportation related, 30% come from energy used for buildings, and 6% come from waste. Next slide. So this slide further breaks that down. You can see that 58% of the city's emissions come from on-road vehicles, 18% come from commercial energy, 12% from residential energy, 5% from off-road vehicles and equipment, and then we get into the waterborne like port and composting wastewater and institutional energy. So this really shows, where can we get the biggest amount of impact in terms of our actions. And really it comes down to reducing transportation-related GHG emissions and reducing emissions associated with heating and cooling buildings. Next slide, please. So we have 6 overarching goals for the Climate Action Plan, and I should mention we're still kind of in the middle process of this plan making. So we're definitely open for discussion and input. This is not completely final when we start getting into the draft actions, but these are the overarching goals. So the first one is plan for all electric buildings citywide. Second one is design a future with zero carbon power sources. Third one is reimagining how we move people and goods. Fourth one, promoting cleaner vehicles and equipment in our community, and then creating a waste-free city and building carbon negative and livable communities. So for each emissions reduction goal, there are multiple actions the city could take. So next slide, please. As we go through these, we really want the commission to be thinking, what are the barriers to achieving these actions? And what tactics can the city take to ensure that these actions are successful? And what else should the city consider when planning to implement these actions? Next slide, please. So for each goal, we have actions and implementation tactics. So for the goal of planning for all electric buildings citywide, so far we have developed and adopt a building electrification code requirement and incentives for existing buildings. And this has already been done by a decent number of cities in the state of California, including Sacramento. The next one is establishing energy performance standards and GHG emission limits for existing commercial buildings, and creating a home energy audit program and minimum efficiency thresholds, as well as mandating all electric new construction to eliminate fossil fuel use. And the next goal is design a future with zero carbon power sources. So incentivizing local solar systems and enhanced energy storage, and promoting participation in community solar programs, and is also enhancing utility coordination or evaluating community choice aggregation options that provide access to carbon-free electricity and building efficiency and retrofit rebates and funding. Next slide, please. So the next goal, reimagining how we move people and goods. As you recall from the previous slides, the emissions inventory, transportation is the largest slice of the pie for where the emissions are coming from in the city. So how do we reduce that? So the actions that we've identified so far, prioritize transit-oriented development and center corridor community growth through land use planning. We're really already doing this, but we really got to double down. And a lot of these actions we already are doing as a city. We just got to further that and double down. So the next one, allocate funding to expand the active transportation and micro-mobility network. Develop partnerships and allocate funding to increase accessibility, frequency, and reliability of public transit. The next one is provide more telecommuting options for city staff. And the next one is advocating for use of alternative fuels within the rail freight system. And next slide, please. So also for this goal of promoting cleaner vehicles and equipment in our community, establishing an all-electric vehicle car share program with free or subsidized rates for low-income residents. Establish vehicle electrification targets for the city municipal fleet, expanding the electric vehicle charging network through building code requirements and installations of public charging infrastructure, and partnering with warehousing and distribution center fleets to electrify their fleet vehicles. And lastly, promoting off-road vehicle electrification and specifying low or zero emission vehicles in city contracts. By off-road, this means like forklifts. Next slide. All right, and lastly, for the goal of creating a waste-free city, expanding food recovery network to collect edible food from businesses, and expanding the commercial and multifamily organic waste programs. And the last goal is building a carbon negative and livable community, develop and implement an urban forest management master plan, and evaluating carbon removal opportunities from industrial processes and direct air capture. So next slide. There are multiple benefits for all these actions. So we'll go through how these help the climate and then how these help citizens of the city of West Sac. So for planning for all electric buildings citywide. So how does it help the climate? It reduces electricity and natural gas use, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Electric buildings can be powered by clean energy, and all electric new construction avoids future emissions and retrofits. And so how does that help you? It reduces indoor air pollution, lowers energy bills, and creates local jobs. So the goal of designing a future with zero carbon power sources, how does it help the climate? It reduces greenhouse gas emissions associated with electricity production. And how does it help you? Creates new jobs in solar and enhances resiliency with local energy sources. Next slide. So the goal for reimagining how we move people and goods. How does it help the climate? Reducing vehicle trips decreases greenhouse gas emissions from fuel use, and using alternative fuels in trains and ships can reduce greenhouse gas emissions and moving goods. So how does it help you? It improves public health, reduces pollution, and promotes walking and biking. It also reduces the cost of living by reducing the need for cars, less fuel, maintenance, etc. And it improves accessibility to goods and services. And for the goal of promoting cleaner vehicles and equipment in our community, zero emission vehicles produce no GHG emissions. No road equipment can use alternative fuels to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. And then, so how does this action help you? It improves public health by reducing pollution, reduces vehicle costs, fuel maintenance, and reduces local jobs for electric vehicle charging and other infrastructure. So next slide. This is the last slide. Just want to end it on the, oh, I missed one here. Creating a waste-free city goal. How does it help the climate? It diverts waste from landfills and reduces greenhouse gas emissions from decomposition. And for the goal of building carbon negative and livable communities, how does it help the climate? Carbon sequestration and removal processes can help balance greenhouse gas emissions that cannot be reduced from direct local action. And how do these help you? So they can create food accessibility and create local jobs, increases local air quality through planting trees, reduces local temperature through shading and heat absorption, and improves climate resiliency and creates local jobs. So next slide. So I want to end it here on the inventory from 2018. I know that was a lot of information, but we want to open up to the commission. If you have any comments, questions, we'd love to answer them.
Do we have any questions or comments from the commission? Vice Chair Reed, go right ahead.
Well, everybody knows this is my jam, so I will try to be short, but I have a few questions. First of all, I want to compliment the staff on the report that was provided in the agenda material. I thought it was very clear, and I appreciated the holistic point of view that was adopted with respect to creating a climate action plan that is broader in scope than the original climate action plans were back a decade ago. They fell into the category of sort of checking the boxes, and our staff has outlined a strategy, I think, that will encompass a bigger picture of what actually impacts climate change and what can help to reverse it. Having said that, I still have questions. So the first is that the goal in the Mayor's Commission was 2045, but as you noted in the staff report and the report on AR number 6 of the IPCC, climate change is moving a lot faster, and the realization of that is becoming more widely understood and appreciated. And so in the resolution for the Yolo County Climate Action Plan, our goal there is actually by 2030 for GHG reductions. And so I'm just bringing that up as I think we ought to think in terms of whether we need to accelerate our response and be more aggressive and ambitious in regard to whatever activities that we lay out in the time frame for implementation, simply because we have less time than people think to contribute to the GHG reductions, as well as the other factors that can contribute, including sequestration and regenerative agriculture, carbon capture, methane removal, and other matters that, again, the staff covered well in the report. So that's a comment. My question is, in spite of the completeness of the report, I had some questions about, I can't quite understand what the public participation process is or where it intersects with the development of the drafts and the various pieces of work that were outlined in the report that are in process. The gap analysis being one, and the opportunities, identification, et cetera. So that's a question that I would appreciate hearing a little bit more about. Do you want to run through all my questions and then you can just run through all your answers? What would you gentlemen prefer?
As long as we can remember them all and we can make sure we respond, we'll be happy to do them one at a time or comprehensively.
Okay, well, I think some of them will be more comments than questions. So the public participation is one of the big ones. So keep that in mind. I did want to talk about the context of our climate action plan in the context of the Yolo County also creating a climate action plan at the same time. And the need to understand when we're writing reports and informing people of what's going on. If the responsibility for GHG reductions within our jurisdiction falls on the city, or whether we're thinking and therefore we're only addressing the GHG emissions reductions that the city has some influence or control over, versus really a call for all hands on deck in terms of the people, the businesses, the organizations really contributing to this whole process. And my preference is for the latter. I don't think the city is solely responsible. You know, we all have an obligation to modify our behaviors and, you know, our energy use and be conscious of our footprint as we go through this as a society. So that is one area where I'd like some clarification about where your focus is on the opportunities that you're identifying with respect to the policy programs that would be recommended. It also, to the extent that the latter, which is the public engagement and businesses, it is a priority for the city, then I think the importance of the education and outreach program is really significant, and that relates to my question on public participation and the importance of getting people engaged now in the process so that there would be some buy-in along the lines of their participation and support for the outcomes of the climate action plan, some of which will be regulatory if you start talking in terms of residential and multifamily retrofit and other items to electrify our use of energy. So the only other thing, and then I'm gonna be quiet. I really appreciated you calling out Cummins Hydrogen Innovation Center, and I think that there's some other companies here in West Sacramento that are also on the innovation side of climate change and alternative approaches to pesticides and soil recovery, and that we might consider ways that we can feature those cities, those companies, and also support them in their efforts. We have a 5-star grant-getting staff here, and as odd as it may sound, some of these businesses, either they don't have the know-how for getting the funding that's available for innovation and capitalizing their operations or funding innovation development, or they don't have the bandwidth within their startup. So if we could provide some technical support for that, as well as the support and I know that the city is involved in our efforts with urban farms and increasing local food access, which not only increases the access to better nutrition and local food, but also can reduce transportation emissions and emissions associated with agricultural production. So I'm going to leave it at that because overall I'm very, very happy with the direction you're going, and I look forward to participating in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. Public participation on this is absolutely critical because we do need maximum buy-in across the community for these measures, and down to the individual, because this is so important, and it's not something the city can do by itself, but it's something the city is going to do what it can to do. But we do need maximum buy-in. And you mentioned the business community. We've already been to the chamber once, and we're going back again next week to go over some of the matters, at the chamber level. So we're looking forward to that, particularly on the transportation side. West Sacramento's history has been, a lot of logistics and trucking. And so we have a lot of, the upside to that is we have a lot of opportunities to make improvements in that area I know Chris White and you mentioned Cummins having their new facility, are working on the hydrogen side, going even beyond, electric vehicles. So there's a lot of positive things, happening. You mentioned, some of the businesses some of the things we've done is we've gone out and we've done some interviews with local businesses and residents that we're calling them climate champions. We're trying to find real world positive examples of people and businesses already doing, X, Y, or Z that are hopefully can inspire others and that can show, no, these things can be done, and that it's more than just a feel good thing. It actually make sense even, economically, to do, be it solar or water use reductions. There's a whole gamut of things, out there that we have a lot of companies doing, and we're open to anybody out there that is, doing something already, that we can include. We're going to put little vignettes in the plan, to try to, make this stuff as relatable as possible. One of my favorite ones is we have a self-proclaimed spreadsheet nerd who tracks gas prices versus what it costs to fill up his EV. And that's particularly pertinent right now. And it's pretty remarkable how inexpensive it is to actually operate an EV versus, a fossil fuel car, right now. And that there's such a fear or a barrier there. There's real world information, from a neighbor. So, but we need to do more public participation. We did do an outreach session specifically targeting underserved and disadvantaged populations that we partnered with the Delta Stewardship Council on. We did that last fall, I think it was. Sort of a co-brand with the Delta Stewardship Council. So there's a lot going on, and we need to do more, and we'll need to continue to do more. But we're also want to make sure we're celebrating that a lot of people in our community are already doing a lot of things to help on climate, even if they may not connect what they're doing is about climate. Anyone who is making sure they're putting their organics, in their organics cart at their home, that's for climate purposes more than anything else. As an example, or as the city programs to help people have more efficient, water, sprinklers, things like that. Very pertinent right now from a drought standpoint, but that's also a climate measure. Water use is one of our biggest. Pumping water, treating water, heating water is one of our biggest energy consumers in our city and many like any other. So anytime you're saving water use, you're saving energy, which saves emissions. So there's a lot of things people are already doing, and part of our campaign is to help people appreciate the fact that some of the things they're already doing are good in this particular arena, but they are going to need to do more also. There's a whole litany of things people can do. We're fully conscious that not everybody can do all of them, but we firmly believe that everybody can do at least something. And that's how we really want to approach this. It could be easy to be kind of gloom and doom on this. We really want to try to be rah-rah and really encourage people, credit them for what they're already doing, but realize you're going to have to do more if we're going to avoid the worst effects of climate change, particularly for folks who are young and may likely see the worst effects down the road that some of us other folks may not. So this is very important, and the outreach that we need in this effort tonight is part of that. So we're open to any ideas about how we can do more outreach, particularly to those underrepresented groups that are already being disproportionately impacted by climate change. So we very much appreciate your comments tonight, and we'll definitely want to continue working on this and getting additional ideas.
Are there any specific plans for community meetings or
we will need to roll.
Forums? with by sector on the to review recommendations that are being considered and listening input in that way.
Yeah, we will need to do more on that front after the first of the year. COVID has certainly hit us in this arena quite a bit. I don't like to. It sounds like an excuse, but it is factual that it's harder to
the real world
get to folks. But in some ways, when we have Zoom meetings, we get more attendance than if we did one in person. So it hasn't been all bad in that regard, but for that really focused outreach that we really need to do, especially to people of different cultures, different languages, doing that on Zoom is just that much harder. So, but we want to continue to make any efforts that we can in those arenas because we really need to hear from real people.
Yeah, on the messaging, I would just, with respect to what Seamus presented, and telling people what it is that you want to do and then how they would benefit. I think some additional columns might be what can you do and where can you go to get the information about how to do it instead of, like they're just going to be recipients of the city's activities. No, they're not. You got to step up. So, as your presentations become more public, I think messaging that's specifically engaging and motivational would be important. And then my final on the public participation would be you have to go through a CEQA process, and I understand that, but I don't, what I would be concerned about is if you're relying on the CEQA process to be the public comment on the climate action plan. And, I think that something earlier in a more draft form in the process is what is really needed to get the buy-in that you would like to have.
We agree. The CEQA time is not the time for that. That's very prescriptive, and that's not the most optimal time to get public comment on your project. So we need we will be doing that, but we need to be doing more outreach outside of the realm of CEQA.
Thank you both very much.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner, 1 second, Commissioner Schatzel. Commissioner Amata had her hand raised.
No problem.
Okay, and then I'll call on you next.
That's fine. Thank you.
I props to both David and Dan meeting. I was involved in the attack, but I keep up because I had a new time. But it was very informative to go to those. And I worked on it. Suzanne asked a question. I think really I'm so glad, and I was in that discussion when it's equity and integrating it into the action plan. I guess I just don't want to. I want to kind of the drum a little more about reaching out to communities of color, low-income communities, because that happens, and I'm not at all saying that that's the way that we'll go here. I think that making sure that we get leadership endorsement. So, for instance, in our city, Bright Broderick, nonprofit over there, they're very influential in that area. Those folks, not just weighing in, but also just endorsing the person of color. In my own community, people are pretty dismissive about climate change because it unless it's impacting them, right? But then it's never really about. And I understand what you're saying about individual. You have to step up to individual. Well, I think people will respond. Their leaders, and so as long as we make sure that we're incorporating our community's leaders into this, I think we'll have success getting full engagement. One thing that you mentioned that we're already doing so much that we're just going to be doing more. I would love to emphasize, since over the summer, we moved within West Sacramento, and we still own our previous home as a rental property, and trying to get some sort of city program to convert the lawn to native plants, no water, so what deal? there's like something on our city website about doing that. I think it was happening. And then I tried looking for like, well, what other resources are there that the state, the county. So I ended up having like all different places. It ended up it was unsuccessful. Couldn't find any. It was basically like, well, these grants are out. You have to just do it out of your own pocket or luck. So we could do more of that. That would be great to make it easy to navigate when people do want to put it into like. I know that at the commission we opened our city. Once again, when the drought happened last time, I saw my neighborhood, older neighborhood, now it's like being placed where people couldn't see those trees anymore. Those trees are chopped down. Our neighborhood was being really shady, being really like hot and hard to park the car in the street. So and I remember at the time someone told me, oh, the city actually you have to kind of like where you remove a shade tree, but it's really enforced. Oh, this is right during the commission. I haven't looked into that to see how verifiable it was. And I was like, oh, that's too bad. People don't know that, or that people can't help maintain those shade. We can have streets, right? So, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, if we can just get more awareness or easier access to things like resources where you can't afford an arborist because your trees are old and in some cases people think it's cheaper to cut it down instead of maintaining. How could we like help our residents maintain trees that can provide shade, like for instance, like these? What can we do if we're doing it? We do more of it. So these are kind of more general comments than there are questions. But if there's anything we can do as a commission, as residents of West Sacramento, improve what we have, then please by all means.
Commissioner Schatzel?
There we go. Sorry, I was trying to get the volume to work. I found when I was reading the report that I think I got too deep into the weeds. I have a lot of comments. I think I'll just send Tracy an email. But when we're talking about public engagement, I think one ways to do it is to, and Commissioner Ahmad just touched on it a little bit, is find ways to recognize issues in the community and help solve them. For example, two examples. In my neighborhood down here, I guess they installed a bunch of water meters, so everybody's water rates went up. So more and more people are eliminating their front yards. Cuts down on the water use on the grass. That's great, but they're putting in rock, which seems to me it would heat the house, which requires air conditioning, which eventually requires electricity and water. We talked briefly at this meeting, the last meeting, about Bridgeway Lake, and that water is a retention pond, and it's supposed to go up, supposed to go down, just like Touchstone, just like the rectangular ponds by the fire station, Station 45. But Touchstone just had to spend a lot of money repairing their bank of the water of their lake because it eroded over time as water goes up and down. We have a lot of houses in Southport that are sinking because of dewatering, because of soil, and because of just lack of water. I think just lack of water in the ground. So half of the house is going one way, and they're having to hire engineers to jack up the foundation on their houses. So public engagement would start, I think, and help a lot with what are the issues that are facing this community now? And then that would get them more involved. McClatchy, we're partnering with Sacramento. I guess another question that jumped out at me too is, and Commissioner Reed, you would know, who's actually in charge of this for West Sacramento? I mean, who is going to come back to this commission and say, okay, this is what we've accomplished in the last year. does the city of Sacramento have any jurisdiction over us within a partnership environment where they're going to come along and say, gee, we did this, but you didn't? I mean, did you
No.
experience any of that?
No, that's not going to happen. They have their own sustainability manager, and I mean, they're a bigger city. They have more staff. They have, people that are specifically assigned to this and don't have 27 other things that they're trying to do, like many of our staff do. But it was a joint effort that was intended to set up a framework within which the city could develop future implementation actions under a set of principles, which are presented in the staff report. And for instance, they have SMUD serving them, and we have PG&E, and so our opportunities are different. Our demographic profile is different, and our industry is different. So it was really to set up a framework, and it was actually quite a well-run process, and they had tons of engagement. And so I think it was a very fruitful process, but it's intended to be a foundation for customization by the city of West Sacramento. And David can correct or amplify because he was a constant participant in that process. He can amplify or correct anything that I've said.
I think how you described that in a nutshell was 100%, correct. That was a high level effort, but each city is going about it on its own to refine that. But also a lot of that work was really set up to really hopefully be emulated by other communities, in our region. And we are starting to dialogue a lot more with our counterparts in Sacramento, in Elk Grove, on top of the longstanding relationships we have with the other jurisdictions in Yolo County. So there's really a lot of movement on this. And I really do believe that the Mayor's Commission, was hopefully the spark for the region, and as well as for us.
I'm happy to hear that, because as I was reading this, I was reminded, and we've all probably seen the public television documentary on the San Francisco Bay, where there was a woman, and I apologize for not remembering her name, from Berkeley, that recognized that every city that surrounded the bay, if they had built their waterfront as they designed it, there was going to be no bay eventually. And she finally got all of the agencies to get together in some state legislation, and the bay is there today. So it's good that we're working with other agencies, and then hopefully we can be consistent, I think, in our policy implementation, because even in COVID, El Dorado County had one policy, and Placer County had different policies, and then Yolo and Sacramento had similar policies. So I hope we can stay a little consistent, but that's good. I mean, I'm hearing good things.
Yeah. Well, John, one thing I wanted to point out too is that David's involved in, because he sits in the same meetings that I do, so I don't know where he is. So there's a climate compact that that Yolo County runs, and that not only are jurisdictions that are adjacent to us, but also like the regional agencies, the Air Quality Management District and the Metro District, et cetera, so that because of the context, GHG emissions don't confine themselves to political boundaries. So there has to be some level of cooperation, and I think that is a really increasing trend. And there is some, because everybody having their own climate action plan, which is we're one of 4 cities and every city has one, but it doesn't make a lot of sense really unless you are closely collaborative with the overarching jurisdiction and perhaps even your adjacent jurisdiction. There were several bills pointing to in the whole area of adaptation, and I meant to ask you that as well, David, because you have resiliency in the plan in the report, but you didn't say what we were going to do with our adaptation planning and whether that was going to be separate or incorporated. So if you could hold that thought. That I will say that there was some legislation pending that was asking for regional organization of climate action, as opposed to this every jurisdiction doing its own thing. And it did not get through the process last year. Whether it will be revived when we start the session next year, I don't know. But this is the trend, and it's also essential to being successful in our activity.
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, I think just one more in the weeds comment. The report said that one of the goals is to have every resident within a quarter mile of a green space area. Terrific, but I guess that terminology is not in our park master plan, nor is it in the general plan. So I guess what jumped out at me was it could be confusing, because if I wanted to develop in town, or if I wanted to build a building, which plan do I follow? The general plan, the park plan, this plan? So I hope those are the kinds of things that, as we work our way through this process, we also work through the consistency through our own agency document, so we just don't, confuse people with, good ideas, but, there's one good idea over here and another one over here and another one over here. So which one do we do? So I'm encouraged by this. I thought this was a really good start, and I'm looking forward to a lot of the things happening and taking place. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. Any other comments from the commission? All right, I'll just make a few brief comments. I wanted to really kind of focus on the section of the report called Next Steps, because that's really, I think, in my opinion, what this comes down to is how do we go about implementing these things that are in this report? What do we do? How do we go about it? And I'm just going to kind of play a little bit of a devil's advocate. So don't take this as me not believing in climate change or anything like that. Okay. So I'm going to put that warning out there, but I really just kind of wanted to present some thought, because I feel like this is what the challenge that we would face as we try to communicate to the community. Some folks in our community might be a little bit resistant or hesitant, or maybe not believe, or whatever their position may be. Before I jump into that, I noticed that in the greenhouse gas pie chart of where kind of those things come from, one thing was omitted, or I missed it, which is the contribution, and maybe that's more of a county level for us specifically, but the contribution that livestock creates in greenhouse emissions seemed to be omitted, or I missed it. But I think a lot of people maybe don't realize or what, but the impact that, mass production of beef and pork and, this livestock creates a huge amount of greenhouse gases. And maybe one element to reducing greenhouse emissions would be to limit your intake of animal-based proteins. And I'm not saying, if you want to go extreme and go vegan, that's completely up to you. But I think that's an important element that sometimes gets overlooked, because it's so deeply embedded in our culture to have an animal protein with most meals. But it is, in my understanding, it is a large contributor to greenhouse emissions. And we tend to focus on the burning of natural gas and gasoline and fossil fuels, but our own culture is a huge contributor to greenhouse gases. So I'm just saying that might be something to consider, or at least include in a climate action plan of, if we're talking about public communication and information that can be disseminated, might be something to at least consider or look at the contribution that livestock makes to greenhouse gases. And then, so moving on to next steps, again, it kind of comes down to how we do it. And it seems like we tend to kind of move toward electric, everything going electric, because it doesn't burn fossil fuel. It doesn't, emit those gases. However, I am not seeing, at least at a state level or local level, any real plan to increase energy production. We continue to tax the grid heavily, leading to costs of energy rising significantly over the last 15 to 20 years. We face rolling blackouts every summer due to our energy usage of electricity. And I know the state is mandating electric vehicles, I think by 2035, if I'm not mistaken, which will also add an increase. And I'm not saying this to say, we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying that these might be some things to consider when we talk about next steps and how we go about implementing them. That by doing these things, we would be increasing our use of the energy grid significantly. So I don't know if installation of solar fields or, new commercial buildings have a requirement for solar, parking lots like I think they do over at IKEA, those types of things where these buildings produce their own energy or at least add to the grid and make some of their energy. But the downside, solar is expensive, very expensive. And I know that in new production of residential homes, there's been a mandate to produce solar on the homes. But one of the downsides to that is that these solar installations, they're mandated leases that come with them. So the person who's trying to buy a home now has a decrease in their loan eligibility because they have to include a solar lease payment and increasing their qualification requirements in an already inflated housing market. So again, I'm not trying to poo-poo this whole thing, but as we look at next steps, I just think that these are the kind of arguments that might be made to say, well, there's not anything that I can do, right? I can't afford a house because you're making me buy solar. Now you're making me buy an electric vehicle. Well, I can't even afford to rent my air conditioner. So what I'm getting at is, as we message, I think you brought up at some point, talking about the cost efficiency of running an electric vehicle versus fuel prices. So the point that I'm making is, I think that's really where we can hone in on. If we have facts that say, look, this person had an electric vehicle for a year, this person had a similar vehicle running fossil fuel, it actually is cheaper. If it actually is cheaper to fuel your car with electricity than it is to fuel it at the standard pump. These kind of facts, I think, would be really important if we can back them up with data and show people, because I think that we will face some challenges from the community. I think we are doing a lot of great things. I, for one, am big on the organic composting of kitchen waste. It's kind of a thing in my house where, as I'm cooking, I have a bowl full of scraps and my wife's like, what is that? And then I go and I dump it into the green bin, because I know that it does make a contribution to, greenhouse gases. So I think I love the plan and I love the idea. I think where the difficulty might come in is in how do we go about doing that? And especially if we make it city policy, if we make it mandated, that there might be some risks involved, there might be some consequences, there could be challenges faced with that. And I just wanted to kind of bring up that I want to make sure that, those things are considered, the reality of implementing those mandates. There could be some fallback on it.
Well, and that is the exact phase we're at. And this is the hard part.
Yes.
We've known what to do for a while. Exactly how we do it is what we're working on now. And our intention is to try to incentivize things as much as we possibly can to try to get maximum buy-in and to help as many people as possible do the things that they need to do. Commissioner Ahmad's comments about the lawn conversion, was a prime example of how we need more programs to help incentivize, people to do things, like as she was suggesting, and solar. And we also need a lot of help from our energy provider, whomever that may end up being. We need a lot of help. The Mayor's Commission work really showed that we are at somewhat of a disadvantage as compared to SMUD territory. SMUD's on the front page of the paper saying they're going to be carbon neutral by 2030 or 2035. Not that far away. PG&E, when we talk to them, they say, well, we're thinking about it. So we're at a bit of a disadvantage there, but doesn't mean that we are beyond hope either. But I appreciate your remarks here, Chair Jans, because that is, where the rubber meets the road here is how are we going to do these things. And that's what we're working on now. And I don't have all the answers yet, but we're going to get them because this is just too important not to.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. And again, I'm not making the comments to downplay the issue. Just kind of bringing them up as things to consider as you might face these kind of questions or comments, for public comment. And maybe it's time. And I know this isn't a city thing, but maybe it's time we as a community, consider trying to get to SMUD again. I know we did it about 15 years ago, I want to say, and PG&E heavily lobbied to stay in West Sacramento. But maybe that's a push we can do as community members, is to consider a transition over to SMUD.
And we're already, SMUD and the Sacramento Air District are starting to get some feelers coming our way. We're doing more and more things with them, more and more partnerships. The electric school buses that we have here in town are for our school district were a result of work with the Sacramento, Air District. So there are a lot of opportunities out there, more and more, for that sort of cross-jurisdictional partnerships, things that didn't, seem impossible, 10 years ago. There's a lot more opportunities now, and it's one of the things that makes us encouraged to take on this, very daunting challenge in our little corner of the world.
Agreed. And I want to thank you all, and Vice Chair Reed, for your participation in this, Commissioner Madu as well, for this. This is a very important topic for us. And I know we can't fix global warming in our little community, but we can certainly do our part to, lower our contribution. And so I appreciate the effort very much. Thank you. Commissioner Madu, you have comments as well?
I just like thought that I want to share, because I think I was thinking about like this being a big taking on big shift narrative about like my kids about when I was younger. I watched Captain Planet. I think it's really I watched. But I love that show. I'm sure some of you grew up with it too. They hate watching it because it's really grainy, as they said, not high. But it would be really cool, maybe the city to incorporate some all sorts of really cool activities. What if there's a class that make engaging kids be like warriors, not but like something. And then I was thinking along the line, forgive, but I don't have the correct verbiage in mind. But I think just my background is so it changed. Like David mentioned, gradually, but our challenge is taking us a lot sooner. Dan said, dealing with this, we are dealing with this right now, right? So but I think engaging children so there's a way we can incorporate activities that we offer to climate.
All right. Any other comments, questions? All right. Well, thank you both for your time tonight, and I appreciate again the effort. We all do, and we look forward to hearing the next updates. And I wish you the best of luck on the next steps, because I know that's going to be really challenging. But we appreciate your time and your effort on this.
Thank you all very much.
All right. Let me get back to the agenda. I believe we're on to the director's report, but I'm just going to double check here. All right, moving on to item number 5A, which is the director's report. Tracy,
Thank
Michael,
you, Chair Jans. Thank you. A few items to mention. First, the holiday tree lighting event was this past Friday, and I just wanted to thank everyone who showed up to participate. It was a really successful event, and our best one, I think, to date. So thanks for your support and for being there. I wanted to share that we have a new Parks Operations Superintendent starting. At our last meeting, I shared that Sam Cooney was retiring at the end of October. Our new parks operations superintendent is Jason Puopolo, and he has traveled all the way from the East Coast to relocate to the Sacramento area. And he has served in a similar capacity for multiple jurisdictions in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, including managing the athletic fields for Clark University, which is an NCAA Division III institution. He's got a lot of experience working with synthetic turf, which is part of what's being proposed for Bright Park. So I'm really excited to have him join our team. And as soon as it's possible, we'll introduce him to you in a commission meeting in person, hopefully. I also wanted to share that the City Council budget is being considered, part 2 of the budget is being considered tomorrow evening. As you may recall, our biannual budget went to council in June, but we separated it into a Part A and Part B budget. We have a lot of park CIP projects that are included in the budget being considered tomorrow evening. The Bright Park Master Plan improvements are one of those items. So the funding strategy that was shared with the commission earlier in the year and also the council was originally part of the June budget, but since we delayed some of the CIP projects because we had time to, that will now be considered tomorrow evening, along with a few other park projects, including lighting for the tennis courts, replastering the pool, and repairing the slide at the rec center. I did check the city's website, and Santa's map is on our homepage. So if anybody is interested in the schedule, the West Sacramento Fire Department, in conjunction with the West Sacramento Firefighters Association, is hosting their Santa run. The schedule's posted on the website. Santa rides through various neighborhoods on a very elaborately decorated fire truck, sleigh, and handing out candy canes that have been purchased and donated by the West Sacramento Firefighters Association. There's also an opportunity for people to donate canned food donations for the needy. So check our website, westsacfund.org or cityofwestsacramento.org for that schedule. I also wanted to share that the West Sac Play annual Poco with Santa event is taking place this Sunday from 10 a.m. to noon at the Bridgeway Lakes Park and Boathouse. This is the 10th annual event. It's really hosted outdoors, and tickets are $10 or free with a toy donation for a COVID-friendly photo with Santa. All proceeds support shade structures and other improvements in our parks. And you can find information about this event on Facebook and Instagram, and the tickets are and reservations are accessible through Evite. And then lastly, I just want to say that it's been a tremendous year. On behalf of all of the Parks and Recreation team, I want to thank you for dedicating your time and energy to this commission and supporting our mission. We wish you all a very happy and healthy holiday and look forward to accomplishing a lot of great things in 2022. As a reminder, City Hall closure will be taking place from December 24th through January 4th. So we look forward to seeing you at our next meeting, which will be on February 1st, likely via Zoom, but we'll keep you posted on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tracy. It has been a fantastic year. And I'm looking forward to working with everybody next year too. So there are last couple items. Are there any, this is the opportunity for you, if you would like the Parks Department, the city staff to address any or put any items onto a future agenda. This would be your opportunity to make that request. Is there any requests for future agenda items? Commissioner Schatzel, it moved over to you. Did you say something?
I wasn't going to, but I could. My screen just froze. You know, back to the tree lighting. When I was there, you know, when I saw you and we were talking, I don't know how many of the commissioners remember the tree lighting used to be on the corner of Jefferson and Park. If you come off the highway and you look straight, it's "Welcome to the City of West Sacramento" sign. that's where the tree lighting was.
Mhm.
And I was talking to Denise from the chamber, and she said, I remember the first one she went to there, she was so afraid somebody was going to get hit by a car because they're running across the street. So when we built the new city hall, we intentionally had that tree planted there just for the street, the tree lighting. And I had to think about that when we were standing there. And it was such a great event that it just made me think of all that other stuff. Anyway, thanks.
That was a great event. It was a lot of fun. It seemed like forever too that we'd been there. Having missed just that little bit of time, it just seemed like forever. It had been since we'd had that event. So it was really great.
Yeah.
All right. So at this point, I'd like to request a motion to adjourn the meeting at 1953 hours.
I'll move.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn by Vice Chair Reed and a second by Commissioner Ahmad.
Thank you. Commissioner Ahmad,
I think you're muted. No, we lost audio then.
no worries.
Thumbs up.
Commissioner Castro, your vote to adjourn the meeting. Aye. Commissioner Horowitz,
Aye.
Vice Chair Reed, is Vice Chair Reed muted?
No, what? No, I said aye.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear. Thank you.
Sorry, sorry.
No, I didn't hear.
Okay.
And Commissioner Shassel,
Hi, and Merry Christmas, everybody. Have a great holiday.
Holidays.
Chair Jan.
Aye, and I hope to see everyone next year, hopefully in person. Commissioner Schatzel and I were talking about that when we saw each other at the tree lighting, that it's just a different dynamic in person, but I know there's not much we can do about it right now, but I'm really looking forward to the time that we can all be together.